It all happened so quickly. One moment, Sarah Wheeler was sitting across from me, her tired eyes reflecting the weariness of someone who had been battling cancer for months. The next, I was staring at a flatline. It was just another routine day at the hospital, or so I thought. I had just finished my rounds, signed off on a few charts, and was heading back to my office for a much-needed break when the call came through. It was the emergency department. "Dr. Turner, we've got a code blue in room 302. Cardiac arrest. Need you down here, stat." I wasn't ready for what awaited me. Sarah had been a patient of mine for several months, battling stage 4 breast cancer. We had tried everything: chemotherapy, radiation, experimental treatments. But the cancer had spread too far. She was now a shell of the vibrant woman I first met. Despite all her suffering, she never once complained. She had 2 young children at home, a husband who adored her, and a strong sense of resolve. I admired her strength, her refusal to let the disease take away her spirit. She fought every day, knowing that time was slipping away. I made my way down the sterile hospital corridors, the cold white walls reflecting the clinical reality of the work we do, saving lives, or sometimes, accepting when a life can no longer be saved. I pushed open the door to room 302, and immediately, the chaotic scene hit me. The room was filled with the buzz of machines, the sharp beeping of heart monitors, and the frantic movement of the medical staff. The nurse was shouting instructions, and an 4-line had already been inserted into Sarah's arm. Her eyes were closed, her skin pale and clammy. I could feel my heart sink as I took in the scene. She was already unresponsive when they brought her in, but this was different. It was the unmistakable stillness of death. "Start CPR," I barked to the team as I rushed to her side, grabbing the defibrillator pads. We worked on Sarah for what felt like an eternity, each minute ticking by with increasing dread. Time was running out. Her blood pressure was dangerously low, and her heart rate was non-existent. The team kept pushing, injecting fluids, administering medications, and delivering shock after shock to her chest, but nothing worked. The machines kept screaming, the blaring alarm of the flatline ringing in my ears like a dreadful reminder of what was happening. I couldn't look at her face anymore. I had been trained for this, I had seen this before. But each time felt like the first. The helplessness, the knowledge that no matter how hard we worked, no matter how many machines we used, the result was often the same: death. In the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the image of Sarah's children, her husband, and what they would face in the coming hours. I tried to focus, tried to shut out the noise, but it was impossible. After what seemed like an eternity, I finally checked her pulse myself, pressing my fingers against her cold skin. Nothing. It was official. Sarah Wheeler was gone. I stood there, staring down at her lifeless body, feeling a weight in my chest. I had lost patients before, many of them. But something about this one hit differently. She had been so young, so full of life before cancer had taken its toll. She deserved more than this. She deserved time. Time to watch her children grow. Time to laugh with her husband. Time to heal. The room fell silent for a moment as the rest of the team continued their efforts, but I knew. I didn't need anyone to confirm it. I looked at the clock on the wall. 5:17 p.m. It was over. The silence that followed was deafening, the kind that fills the space when there's nothing left to say, nothing left to do. The team began to pack up, preparing for the next patient, the next emergency. But I couldn't shake the image of Sarah, her body cold, her heart no longer beating. I couldn't even look at her family. It would be hours before they arrived, but I had already started preparing myself for the hardest conversation I would ever have to deliver. I stepped outside the room, my heart heavy, my mind racing. The hospital had its routine, its flow, its cold efficiency, but none of that mattered right now. What mattered was the devastation that awaited Sarah's family. I had to tell them. I had to break the news that their wife and mother was gone. I walked down the hallway to the waiting room, where Ryan, her husband, and their 2 children sat nervously. I could see the worry in their eyes, the anticipation of news they already knew deep down, but didn't want to accept. "Dr. Turner," Ryan stood up as soon as he saw me, his voice trembling. "How is she? Is she okay?" I felt the knot in my stomach tighten. This was the hardest part of my job, the part one never quite got used to. How do you prepare yourself to crush someone's world? To tell them that their loved one is gone? That there's no coming back? I took a deep breath and sat down across from them. Ryan, I'm so sorry. We did everything we could, but... Sarah's heart stopped. We couldn't bring her back. His face went pale. His eyes searched mine for any hint of a mistake, a misdiagnosis, some way out. But I couldn't offer him that. No, that's not possible. She can't be gone. She's only 34. She's not ready. We're not ready. The words hung in the air, a painful reality no one could escape. His 2 children, barely teenagers, clung to his side. The oldest, a girl of about 12, began to cry softly, her face a mixture of confusion and sorrow. Mom's not coming back, is she? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I closed my eyes, fighting the tears that welled up in my own. I'm afraid not, I replied softly. I'm so sorry. As Ryan held his children, the grief in the room was palpable. I could feel the weight of their sorrow pressing down on me. My job wasn't just to save lives. It was to bear witness to these moments, to help them navigate the darkest times of their lives. But sometimes, it felt like the weight of it all would break me. I told them that they could see Sarah, say their goodbyes. I would give them the time they needed, but I knew there was nothing more I could offer them now. My role was done. The rest of the night was a blur, filled with paperwork, arrangements, and the quiet whispers of the hospital's routine. But the image of Sarah's lifeless body, her heart no longer beating, stayed with me. It stayed with me through the rest of the night, through the meetings with the funeral home, and even as I sat down to complete her death certificate. It lingered in my mind like a shadow, casting doubt over everything I thought I knew about medicine, about life, and about death itself. At 5:45 a.m., when I thought the night was over, I received a call from the nurse in charge of Sarah's room. Dr. Turner, you need to get back to room 302. There's something strange going on with the monitors. The door swung open just as I finished Sarah's death certificate. I was exhausted, my hands trembling from the long hours I'd spent trying to bring her back, but the weight of it all seemed to have settled into my chest. I hadn't expected to feel this burden, but there it was, a heaviness that refused to lift. I knew it wasn't just about losing Sarah. It was the realization that, sometimes, no matter how hard you try, there are forces beyond our control. The death of Sarah Wheeler was final, irreversible. Or so I thought. When I walked into the dimly lit hallway of the hospital, the soft, flickering lights above seemed to echo my unease. My footsteps echoed, too, bouncing off the white sterile walls, each step drawing me closer to the truth I wasn't yet ready to confront. Dr. Turner? Nurse Evelyn's voice came through the intercom, breaking the silence. Yes, Evelyn? I don't know how to explain this. It's about Sarah Wheeler. She's alive. I froze. The words didn't make sense. What do you mean alive? I'm not sure, Dr. Turner. You need to come back to room 302 now. The words burned in my ears as I rushed back to Sarah's room. I pushed through the door, my mind already racing through 100 possible explanations, none of which made sense. But as soon as I saw the sight before me, everything inside me stopped. There she was, Sarah Wheeler, sitting up on the bed. Her eyes were wide open, her breathing steady. The color had returned to her face, and her lips, which had been pale and cold just an hour before, now looked soft and warm. She wasn't hooked up to any machines, but she was alive. Fully conscious. No tubes. No IVs. Just her, sitting up in the bed, looking around like nothing had happened. Sarah? I whispered, almost unsure whether I was hallucinating. She turned her head slowly towards me, her expression confused, but there was no mistaking it. She was awake, alert, and alive. Dr. Turner, she said softly, her voice hoarse but clear. What happened? Where am I? I walked toward her, my legs heavy, my mind struggling to process what my eyes were seeing. Sarah, you were gone. We couldn't save you. But she interrupted me, shaking her head gently. I remember feeling nothing. Then everything went dark. I saw my sister. She was there. She said it wasn't my time yet. And then, I don't know, I woke up here. Her voice trailed off as she looked around the room, trying to piece together what had happened. I could hardly believe it. Sarah had been gone. Her heart had stopped, her body had gone cold. I had even signed her death certificate myself. But there she was, as alive as I had ever seen her. I checked the monitors again, convinced that there had to be some mistake. But no, her vitals were stable, her pulse strong, her blood pressure within normal range. This was no fluke. "How do you feel?" I asked her, my voice barely above a whisper. "I feel fine. Actually, better than I have in weeks." She smiled faintly, but there was something in her eyes that made me uneasy. It wasn't fear or confusion. It was something else. Something distant. I couldn't explain it. This wasn't just a medical anomaly. It was something else entirely. I had witnessed deaths before, but nothing like this. Something about Sarah's revival didn't add up. I sat down beside her, struggling to form a coherent thought. "Sarah, I need you to understand. You were dead. We declared you dead. There was no brain activity. No pulse. Your heart had stopped for more than an hour." She nodded, her face still calm, but her brow furrowed slightly. "I know. I saw it. I saw everything." "Everything?" I asked, my heart racing. "What do you mean you saw everything?" I don't know how to explain it. I was in a place. It wasn't a dream, Dr. Turner. It was real. There was a light. And then my sister. She told me it wasn't my time to go. That I had to go back. I had a choice. I could stay or come back. And I chose to come back. Her words sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't just a near-death experience, it was something more. Something I couldn't explain. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. I called in the neurologist, the cardiologist, anyone I could think of who could help me make sense of what was happening. They all arrived, each of them staring at Sarah with wide eyes, trying to find any hint of a logical explanation. But none came. No one could explain how or why Sarah had come back. It didn't fit any medical textbook, any theory of life and death that we knew. As the hours passed, Sarah's recovery seemed too perfect. Her skin tone returned to normal, and her blood tests showed no signs of any organ damage. Her body, which had been shutting down, was now functioning as if it had never been in distress. It was then that I began to wonder, had we made a mistake? Had I missed something in my initial examination? Was this all just a fluke? The hospital's team continued to run tests, but the results were baffling. Sarah was healthier than she had been in weeks. There were no signs of hypoxia, no signs of brain damage. It was as if she had never been clinically dead in the first place. But as we delved deeper, something else began to emerge. I started noticing subtle changes in Sarah's behavior. While her physical health had improved, her emotional state seemed different. She began talking about her sister, about the time she had spent with her in the void, as she called it. She described a sense of peace that was almost unsettling. It wasn't just the normal aftermath of a near-death experience. It was as though something had shifted within her, something beyond medical explanation. "Dr. Turner," she said quietly one evening as I sat beside her, "I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like I'm no longer the same person. I'm not afraid of anything. But at the same time, I feel like I'm carrying something, a weight. It's hard to describe." I didn't know what to say. I had no answers for her. In all my years of medical practice, I had never encountered a case like Sarah's. Nothing about it made sense, and yet everything about it felt real. The next morning, Sarah seemed to be a bit more withdrawn. She spent a lot of time staring out the window, lost in thought. It was like she was seeing something we couldn't. I wondered, for the first time, if the revival was truly a blessing, or if it came at a cost that we hadn't yet understood. By the end of the week, Sarah had been released from the hospital. She looked healthier than ever, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She left with her family, her children running ahead of her as she smiled and waved goodbye. But I couldn't forget what she had said about her time in the void. Could it be true? Had she really seen something? Was there something waiting for her on the other side? And what about the others? Those patients who were revived and returned from death with memories, experiences, and newfound wisdom. What were we missing? Was this some kind of medical miracle, or was it the beginning of something we would come to regret? As I watched Sarah leave the hospital that day, I couldn't help but wonder, had I just witnessed a miracle? Or had I made a mistake, one that would haunt me for the rest of my life? It wasn't long after Sarah left the hospital that the unease began to settle in. She looked healthier than I had ever seen her, her cheeks flushed with life, her smile brighter than before. But every time I saw her, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed within her. Something deeper than just her physical health. It started with the small things. Little things that seemed innocent enough at first but began to compound, pulling me into a web of confusion. Sarah had been through so much. She had fought for her life. But now, after what we had witnessed, she was different. It was as though she was no longer entirely the same person I had treated in the past few months. Her family noticed it too. Her husband, Ryan, mentioned it first during one of our follow-up appointments. "She's not the same, Doc," he said with a quiet, concerned voice. "I don't know what it is. It's like she's lost that spark. She's not as fearful, but she's distant, colder in a way." I tried to dismiss it, rationalizing it as the result of her battle with cancer, the trauma, the uncertainty, the confusion. She had come back from the brink of death. Maybe this was just part of the process. But something in my gut told me it was more than that. It felt like she had brought something back with her, something that couldn't be explained. The change was subtle at first. Sarah would sit for hours, staring out the window, her expression distant, as if she was looking beyond the world outside. Her children, once her source of joy, seemed to fade into the background of her life. They would play in the living room, laughing and shouting, but she wouldn't look up. She wouldn't engage. At first, Ryan brushed it off, chalking it up to the stress of recovering. But I wasn't convinced. Sarah's mind seemed sharper, but it wasn't the same sharpness I had seen before. It was something else, something unsettling, like she was processing information at a level I couldn't quite understand. I decided to visit her at home one afternoon. I had to see her for myself, to observe her in her natural environment, away from the sterile, controlled confines of the hospital. When I arrived, Sarah greeted me at the door with a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. She invited me in, her voice calm, too calm, as if her emotions were locked behind an invisible wall. "Doc, you look tired," she said, her tone soft but unyielding. "I'm doing okay, really. Better than I thought I would, actually." Her demeanor seemed fine, almost too fine. But the air around her felt heavy, thick with something I couldn't quite place. The house was quiet, too quiet. The children were in their rooms, and Ryan had stepped out to run errands. As I sat down, Sarah took a seat across from me, folding her hands neatly in her lap. Her eyes seemed more focused now, as if she was studying me in a way I wasn't used to. "Sarah," I began gently, "I know you've been through a lot, but I'm worried. You've come so far, and I know this whole experience can change you. But Ryan's been concerned about your behavior. About your..." She interrupted me. "I know what he said," she said, her voice now sharper, though not with anger. It was something colder, more calculating. "He's worried that I've changed. That's normal, isn't it? People change when they come back from the dead." Her words cut through me like a blade. Come back from the dead. That's exactly what she had done. But hearing her say it so plainly, so matter-of-factly, rattled me to my core. It was as though the gravity of the situation, the fact that she had literally returned from the other side, no longer affected her. "Sarah, I need you to tell me what you experienced," I said, leaning forward. When you were gone, what happened? What did you see?" For a moment, she looked away, her gaze drifting toward the window. She paused for a long time before answering. "I saw my sister," she whispered, her voice trembling. "And there was a light. But it wasn't like the kind of light people talk about. It was cold, distant, and so full of truth. It didn't hurt, but it was suffocating. I wanted to stay. She told me I couldn't yet, that I had to go back. But I don't think I should have." Her words hit me like a hammer. What did she mean by, "I don't think I should have"? It felt like a dark realization, something she had not said before, something she had buried deep within herself. Was Sarah regretting coming back? Do you think something followed you back? I asked cautiously, unsure how to phrase the question without scaring her. But the words slipped out before I could stop them. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked at her hands, turning them over as though inspecting them for something I couldn't see. I don't know, she said, her voice barely audible. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I hear whispers. And I know I wasn't alone there. In that place. It's like it's always with me now, this shadow. It's following me, and I don't know how to stop it. I could feel a cold sweat beginning to form on my back. This wasn't the Sarah I had known. This wasn't the woman who had fought to stay alive for her children, for her family. This wasn't a woman who had been given a second chance at life. No, something darker was now at play. The rest of our conversation passed in a haze. I could see her growing more distant, more withdrawn as we spoke. The sharpness in her eyes had faded into something more like a void, a blank space where something was missing. And it wasn't just the fear of death. It was as though she had been irrevocably altered by the experience. And that change was beginning to unravel her. When I left that evening, I felt the weight of it all pressing down on me. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't explain how Sarah's revival had caused this unsettling transformation in her. And I couldn't explain why, despite everything, I felt responsible for it. Was this the cost of playing with life and death? Was it too much for the human mind to endure? I went back to the hospital and began reviewing the other cases. The patients who had experienced similar things, those who had died and returned. The patterns weren't clear, but they were undeniable. There was a shift in them all. Some described it as a peaceful experience. Others, like Sarah, felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as though they had crossed a line that should not have been crossed. The more I thought about it, the more I began to question everything I had ever known about medicine, about life, and about death. Had we made a mistake? Had we tampered with forces beyond our understanding? And what happened to the people we brought back? The change in Sarah wasn't an isolated incident. It was just the beginning of something bigger. Something I wasn't ready to face. And in the back of my mind, I couldn't escape the haunting thought. What happens to the people we revive? Is it really them, or is something else now walking in their place? The moment I left Sarah's room that day, the questions I'd been pushing to the back of my mind began to grow louder. I could hear them echoing in my thoughts, drowning out everything else. Was I wrong to bring her back? Was the miracle I had witnessed truly a blessing? Or had I made a mistake that would cost not just her, but others, more than they could bear? The guilt weighed on me with each passing hour. I had spent years of my life learning how to save lives, how to fight death with every tool at my disposal. But now, with Sarah, I had crossed an invisible line. We had revived her, but at what cost? I thought back to my medical training, the countless hours spent studying anatomy, physiology, and emergency procedures. I had always been confident in my ability to save lives, to bring people back from the brink. But no one had ever warned me about what came next. No one had told me that sometimes, bringing someone back might mean returning them to something far worse than death. Sarah's recovery was nothing short of miraculous, but the change in her was unsettling. The woman who had once been full of hope, even in the face of terminal cancer, was now a stranger to me. She was distant, withdrawn, and as the days passed, I noticed that she was becoming more and more disconnected from her family. She didn't laugh at the jokes Ryan told her. She didn't get excited when her children showed her their drawings or when they ran into the room to hug her. It was as if she was no longer part of their world. Something had shifted in her, and no amount of medical knowledge could explain it. I spent sleepless nights scouring medical journals, reading up on Lazarus syndrome, a phenomenon where patients who have been declared clinically dead unexpectedly revive. But what I was seeing in Sarah wasn't just a physical revival. It was something deeper, something more troubling. The psychological toll of death, or the perception of it, had clearly affected her in ways I couldn't comprehend. I had always prided myself on my clinical detachment, the ability to separate emotions from my work. But this time, it was different. I wasn't just treating a patient, I was part of a story that felt bigger than anything I had ever encountered. Each time I looked at Sarah, I couldn't help but feel responsible for the shift that had overtaken her. She was no longer the same woman who had fought for every day with her family. She was someone else, a shadow of herself, carrying something heavy, something dark. I needed answers. I had to understand what was happening to her, and to the others like her. Were they all experiencing the same transformation? Had I opened a door to something far beyond my understanding? The hospital felt colder than usual as I walked the halls the next morning. The bright fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, but they did nothing to lift the weight I felt pressing on my chest. The air in the hospital always smelled sterile, antiseptic, like a place designed to heal, to fix what's broken. But right now, the smell was suffocating. It was as if the very walls of the building were closing in on me, trapping me in a decision I had made without fully understanding the consequences. As I passed by the break room, I overheard a conversation between two nurses, their voices low but clearly audible. "Did you hear about Sarah Wheeler? They say she came back from the dead. But something's not right with her. She's not the same. She looks fine. Her heart's perfect, all her vitals are normal. But I don't know, it's like she's not even there. People are starting to notice. Her family says she's been acting strange." I stopped in my tracks, the weight of their words sinking deep into me. Was I the only one who saw it? Was I the only one who felt like something was horribly wrong? I couldn't ignore it anymore. I needed to confront Sarah, to understand what had happened to her during the time she was dead. What had she experienced? And what had it done to her? I drove to her house that afternoon, my mind swirling with questions. I told myself I was going to have a calm, professional conversation with her. I would offer her support, help her process what had happened. But deep down, I knew I was afraid. Afraid of what I might uncover. Afraid that what I had done couldn't be undone. When I arrived at her house, Ryan greeted me at the door, his face drawn and weary. He didn't speak at first, just stepped aside to let me in. The house was quiet, too quiet. The children were nowhere to be found. "Sarah's upstairs," Ryan said, his voice low. "She's been different. She hasn't been talking much. Just staring out the window for hours." I nodded, the lump in my throat tightening. I couldn't bring myself to tell him what I was truly thinking, that I feared what Sarah had become, that she was no longer just a patient. She was a symptom of something larger, something that went beyond medicine. When I reached her room, I found her sitting by the window, her gaze fixed on the horizon. She didn't turn when I entered, didn't acknowledge me at first. The silence between us felt suffocating. "Sarah," I said gently, my voice quieter than I intended. "How are you?" She didn't answer right away. After what seemed like an eternity, she finally spoke, her voice distant. "I'm fine, Dr. Turner," she said, but the words didn't ring true. There was no warmth in her tone, no emotion. It was as if she were speaking through a veil, her words falling flat, disconnected from the person who had once been so full of life. "Sarah," I pressed, sitting down beside her, "I need to understand what happened. What you saw. What you felt." Her eyes flickered, a brief flash of something. Fear? Regret? I couldn't tell. "I told you," she said softly. "I saw the light. And then I heard her voice. My sister. She told me I had to come back. But it wasn't just light, Dr. Turner. There was something else. Something waiting for me. It's still here." Her words sent a chill down my spine. I had been right to worry. The experience had left its mark on her, and not just in the physical sense. There was something more, something that I couldn't explain. And it was changing her, perhaps in ways that I couldn't reverse. "I don't know how to fix this, Sarah," I admitted, my voice shaking slightly. "I don't know if we can fix it." Her eyes met mine for the first time, and for the first time since her revival, I saw something human behind them. A flicker of vulnerability. "You can't fix what's already been done, Dr. Turner," she said quietly. "But you can help me figure out what comes next." The weight of her words hit me harder than any medical dilemma I had ever faced. We weren't just dealing with the revival of a life. We were dealing with a transformation, a shift in something far deeper. The price of bringing Sarah back was more than I could have ever imagined. I left her house that day with more questions than answers, the burden of my guilt only growing heavier. I knew I couldn't continue without finding the truth. I had to confront what had happened to Sarah, to understand why it was happening to her and to others like her. But as I walked to my car, the world around me felt suddenly smaller. The weight of my responsibility, my mistakes, pressed down on me like a suffocating cloud. Was there more to this than just bringing people back to life? What if, in my desperation to save lives, I had opened a door that could never be closed? The days following Sarah's departure from the hospital dragged on, each one feeling heavier than the last. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, something beyond just the physical aspects of her recovery. What I had witnessed with her revival, what I had brought back from the brink of death, felt far too complex, too powerful for me to fully understand. And I was beginning to wonder if it was all worth it. I couldn't stop replaying our last conversation in my mind. You can't fix what's already been done. Those words echoed in my head, rattling around like loose change in an empty pocket. It wasn't just Sarah who had changed. It was the entire world I had thought I understood. I had spent my life believing in clear-cut definitions of life and death, of right and wrong. But now, after everything that had happened, the lines between the two had become blurred. I tried to focus on my work at the hospital. I had other patients, other lives to save, but nothing seemed the same. Every patient I treated, every life I fought for, felt like it came with a weight I hadn't known before. I was starting to question my own ability to make the right decisions. Had I chosen Sarah's life because it was the right thing to do? Or had I chosen it because I couldn't bear to let her go, even though deep down I knew that sometimes letting go was the best choice? That question haunted me as I went through the motions of my day. The hospital had its own rhythm, its own pulse. But I was out of sync with it now. I felt like an intruder, like I didn't belong in this world anymore. The weight of what I had done, to Sarah, to myself, pressed down on me with every step. I had to face the truth. I had opened a door that should have remained shut. And while Sarah's revival was miraculous in a sense, it was also a curse. A burden. And that burden wasn't hers to carry alone. It was mine. It wasn't long before I received the call from Ryan. He sounded frantic, his voice tight with worry. "Dr. Turner, you need to come over. It's Sarah. Something's wrong. She's not the same." The pit in my stomach deepened as I listened to his words. I had been waiting for this, for the moment when the change in Sarah would become undeniable. But I hadn't expected it to come so soon. I had hoped, foolishly, that things would settle. That Sarah would find her way back to herself. But I should have known better. No one returns from death untouched. And neither had she. I arrived at Sarah's house in a daze, the familiar suburban neighborhood suddenly feeling alien to me. It was a bright, sunny afternoon, but the warmth of the day did nothing to lift the chill I felt in my bones. Ryan met me at the door, his face pale and drawn, his hands shaking. "Come inside," he said, his voice low. "She's in the living room." As I stepped inside, the silence was palpable. It felt suffocating, thick with an energy that I couldn't place. The children were nowhere to be found, and the house, which had once been filled with laughter and life, now felt cold and sterile. Sarah sat in the living room, her back to the window, staring at the wall ahead of her. She didn't look up when I entered. "Sarah," I called softly, my voice tentative, unsure of what I was walking into. "How are you feeling?" She didn't respond right away. It was as if she hadn't heard me at all. I glanced at Ryan, who stood silently by the doorway, his eyes filled with a mix of concern and helplessness. I stepped closer to her, my footsteps muffled on the carpet. "Sarah?" I said again, more firmly this time. Her head turned slowly, and when her eyes met mine, I felt a sharp pang in my chest. It wasn't the same Sarah I had known. The warmth in her gaze was gone, replaced by a coldness that sent a shiver down my spine. "I'm fine," she said, her voice flat, almost mechanical. "I feel better than ever." The words felt rehearsed, like she was going through the motions, saying what she thought I wanted to hear. But her eyes, her expression, there was nothing there. No life, no spark. Just emptiness. "Sarah," I began, kneeling down in front of her, trying to make eye contact. "You've been through a lot. I know this is hard, but I need you to talk to me. What's going on? Why do you feel like this?" She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her mind working, but the connection between us seemed distant, as if a barrier had formed between us that I couldn't cross. "I saw it again," she said, her voice a whisper, barely audible. "The place. The emptiness. It's following me. I can feel it watching." I could feel my heart race. The place. The emptiness. Those words were becoming all too familiar. She had spoken about it before, but now it seemed like it was becoming a part of her, an inescapable shadow that clung to her no matter how hard she tried to outrun it. "Sarah, listen to me," I said, my voice urgent, but still calm. "What you're feeling, it's a side effect of everything you've been through. You face death, and that changes you. But we can work through this. We'll get you the help you need." But she wasn't listening. She wasn't responding to me the way I had hoped. There was no relief in her eyes. No understanding, no desire to fight back. It was like I was speaking to a stranger, someone I didn't recognize. And the fear that had been building inside me for days suddenly crystallized into something far more terrifying. "Sarah, what's happening to you?" I asked, my voice shaking now. "You're not the person you were. Please talk to me. You don't have to go through this alone." She tilted her head slightly, almost like she was considering my words, but her next response struck me like a bolt of lightning. "I'm not supposed to be here, Dr. Turner," she said, her voice eerily calm. "I wasn't meant to come back. But now that I have, I don't know how to make it stop." I stood there, frozen, as her words sank in. I wasn't meant to come back. The weight of those words hit me harder than anything else she had said. Had I done this? Had I brought her back from the dead only to force her into a life she wasn't ready for? Ryan stepped forward, his face a mask of fear and frustration. "What are you saying, Sarah? We're here for you. We want you here with us. You're not alone." But Sarah's gaze never wavered from the blank space in front of her. She didn't acknowledge Ryan's words, didn't look at him. It was as though she had already stepped into a place beyond us, beyond the life we were trying to rebuild for her. The burden of it all crashed down on me then. This wasn't just Sarah's fight anymore. It was mine. The decision I had made to bring her back had consequences far beyond anything I had imagined. And now, I was faced with a question that I didn't have an answer for. Was saving her worth it? The weight of my guilt pressed down on me, and as I watched Sarah, a woman who had once been so full of life, now sitting in a quiet, empty room, I wasn't sure anymore. The cost of life had become too high, too complicated. What was I supposed to do now? Could I still fix it, or had I already crossed a line from which there was no return?